Welcome, Tiny Hands, Big Dreams. So we're going to talk a bit about things that we didn't expect, even though we already had a pre-trip that we came in on and like tried to like orient ourselves, and then yeah, things we just didn't expect. They're different. This is not a negative list. This is not like a griping about things. This is like we came from a different culture, different place, different expectations, and these were just simply like adjustment items that we had to sort of figure out. So we'd like to go through and we thought, hey, this would be useful if you're looking at moving here. This
Here
could be
being
useful.
Ecuador.
Here being Southern Ecuador. Welcome to Southern Ecuador. It's cool here. It's not. It's really actually kind of warm.
It's lovely.
It's it's good. You don't need to bring anything but t-shirts and jeans. One jacket in case you go to Loja.
That's about it.
That's about it. All of our winter clothes are stored and double bagged. Um, all my overalls. Gosh, I liked overalls. We don't wear them. So there's our first thing. We'll just add that.
Oh boy. All right. So one of the things that I know no one ever told you, no one ever, you don't see it anywhere, is just the amount of dogs that sort of exist here. They're not they're not strays. Most of them are not, at least. Most of them are well cared for. They just are. They're everywhere. They're on the roads. They'll just lay in the middle of a road. And I'm like, do we stop? Do we get out? Is it okay? And eventually we realize they just hang out and everybody just drives around them. Nobody cares. There's no problems.
The smaller the road, the more towards the center. On our road, they're right smack in the middle. And they'll look at you like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm driving on the road. They're like, we have to move? I'm like, well, sometimes they don't. We just go around them on the shoulder.
But even on the highways, they're just
They're off to the side
yeah,
more,
but they're there.
but you may still have to
Yeah. And for the most part, none of them are aggressive. There are no issues with them. We've had a couple experiences, but those dogs were not actually free ranging.
those were like
Those were very well,
cage
yes,
kept.
that then were out and caused problems. But other than that, at first I was real worried about, oh, there's just going to be dogs roaming. Like, do we have to worry about our animals? Do we have to worry about us? Like, what's going to happen? No.
In the States, like a loose dog is like, oh, there's a loose dog running around here. Everybody's dog is loose. Like that's how they live. They're free, and honestly, they've learned to behave reasonably. We're like, oh, they're going to eat all the chickens and ducks. No, they're just
Mostly
all
don't.
coexisting together. There's a bunch in our. We just did a video on our drive to Loja, and there's just dogs on the side of the road everywhere. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
They exist.
It's kind of,
but they work
like
out.
a Disney movie.
It is. We saw them in Loja. Like we'd just be there, and there's like 5 dogs, and you're like Dalmatian and a husky and a wiener dog thing and a houndy thing and a we don't even know, and they're just all following each other, having a day.
Oh, that's the other thing, is there's no real breeds of dogs. They're all just like these weird mutts that have happened over the years, and it's kind of entertaining.
Yeah. Eh. All right, driving. So, driving is slightly different. Um, People just sort of park on the road sometimes, at least out where we are, but they'll do it in the cities too. They'll just stop. Like there's 2 lanes of traffic, and they'll just stop outside of the parking like area, and they'll just like get out and go get some chicken. Not normally in the States, this would be cause to honk and swear, like, what are you doing, buddy? No, no, it's a more informal kind of thing. Lines on the roads, people just sort of like navigate between and around where they need to be. Now, that being said, accidents here are way more rare than in the States. There's Most people don't have insurance. There's a state insurance for injuries to other people, but realistically, if you wreck your car, you wrecked your car, you're going to pay for it. Somebody else wrecked your car, you may still have to pay for it. People are pretty cautious, except for the taxis. Watch out for the taxis. They drive like lunatics.
And the buses sometimes.
And the buses are big taxis. Oh, you'll get passed by a bus doing 80 miles an hour on a mountain road where there's like fog and things, and you're like, what are you?
Yeah.
No, the bus drivers, there should be a racing league for those guys. They're
I'll never forget the first time we were here visiting, and we actually
Hmm.
we were going back in a bus from Zamora to Loja, and it was late, and we were tired, and it'd been a long day, and I'm like falling asleep in the bus, and suddenly on the narrow little mountain road, I look over next to me, and there's a bus passing the bus on the narrow, windy
And
path.
it's like road with like
Oh my
thousands of foot down a cliff and a sheer wall, and one bus has decided to just like on a blind curve. I'm just gonna power like
Now it doesn't faze me nearly as much, but
it takes a bit of getting used to.
yeah. There's also the honking here has its own
There's a language.
its own language.
Its own language. It's rarely in just anger and frustration. It's a communication of like I'm gonna pass you a little meep meep or a thanks meep meep or like you can go over a thing. A construction guy's doing something and he waves at you, give him a little meep meep thanks, and waves at you. Truckers. There's a language to the honking.
Yeah, people flash their lights. Usually, sometimes we don't know what it means. You honestly, we're like, okay, I don't know, but sometimes it means there's like a police checkpoint up ahead.
It could be.
It's all these random little communications between vehicles that you eventually will learn. But it was definitely a strange thing. I'm not used to seeing that at all. One of the other things that seemed a little strange to me, I guess I'm just used to everything being open very early in the morning, at least downtown of larger cities, but I think it's the towns too. Stores don't open till 9, 10, sometimes 11 in the morning, which is fine as long as you know that. But when you go out and you expect like that you can go in and you can get copies made or you can go to the hardware store or something.
I went to Loja to get, I had to do an appointment at the notary to have something officialized. I'm like, oh, I need this many copies, this. And then I get there and I'm like, where's the copy place? Like I tried to look it up ahead of time, which is sketchy. And I'm there in the street and I'm looking like, and there's just nothing. And then 9:15, all the roll-up doors start going open. Well, a lot of the signs for the businesses are inside the roll-up door. So when they close,
oh yeah, all the stores here have
it looks like self-storage.
Yeah,
like
they just close. There's no signs. There's nothing.
Yeah, that's their security. Is there's just a giant steel roll-up door, and they go home, which is usually upstairs.
And they'll be there when they normally are, except for when they're not, which is another.
You get somewhere and you're like, "Where's it?" And the neighbor's like, "Sometimes they're not here."
Or they're at lunch, or they went somewhere. And you start to that. That's just part of the culture that you get used to.
A little more informalness. Appointments will come the same way. Like, oh, we're going to be here at this time on this day. Probably, mostly.
Except for when we're not.
Yeah.
And once you get used to that, it's no longer annoying. It definitely is in the beginning. It's just a huge culture shock. But once you get used to the fact that it's not out of disrespect, it's just out of culture.
Okay. Grocery stores. Grew up with grocery stores. That's where you buy your food. That's just sort of it. Farmers markets, like, ooh, fancy thing, or get some strawberries one day, right? 98% of what we buy comes from the big outdoor markets. We just did the big Sunday Mercado video, which is the big market near us in Loja. There's literally one every day of the week. It's a big outdoor market. Our Saturday market one was our favorite, which you can't really find information on anywhere. Like it didn't exist. We stumbled upon it the first time, and we were just like, oh, and it's just blocks, like 2 long blocks of just vendors and booths and things, and like more produce than we'd ever seen in our lives. It's not on Google. It's not on any list. You just had to know about it. So here it's Sunday, and that's where a lot of people get their stuff now. Tiendas, or what they're called. They're like little stores. They're like little mom and pop stores. There's a ton of small business. Ecuador is literally mostly small businesses, and they have their little stores, and they're like they're staple foods and your basics. But we're talking, it's the size of a 1-car garage. Like that's the store, and whatever they can jam in there. So it's limited, especially when you get into your fruits and vegetables things. Like how old is it? How this? How like.
But the like American style grocery stores are they exist in bigger cities. Loja. We went to Loja. We just went to Loja and went to Super Maxi, which is like the biggest, most American-like store. It's fine.
It's like, to give
But
you an idea of size, if I had to metric it, it's probably like 30,000 square feet. Like, it's a good sized store, and they do a good job of. They import lots of stuff. They,
yeah,
you know, you get fancy cheeses, and you can get your things, your stuff, and they cater to the gringo market quite a bit, and the higher end market. But that's there. That's 3+ hours away.
yep.
I don't shop there very often.
No, and there's only a few stores like that, even in the bigger cities. There's just not as much. It's just not what's commonly used for grocery shopping.
So it's just different. We actually really like it. We go to the big market. Boy, the selection of fruits and vegetables and things and stuff, and the prices are all better too.
Yeah.
There's also, every town has its official central market. Central market has a smattering of fruit, vegetable vendors, dry goods, meat, poultry,
Kind of everything.
sundries. Sundries. That's a good word. Um, and then, like, the one here upstairs has clothing and shoes and women's apparel
The
and.
bigger the city, the bigger the market, the more the selection. Um, so yeah, I guess that's kind of the equivalent, the Ecuadorian equivalent of like a mega store or something is the central market.
It's like a mini mall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in those places, you always carry cash. Pretty much anywhere in this country, just make sure you carry cash.
There's not a single person at the outdoor market or the central market that will take a credit card. Like, they just know.
And a lot of smaller stores won't either.
I've had to use it a
honestly,
few
most.
times, and they're like, eh. And the bigger of the stores, will, like, they'll hem and haw. They're like, do you really, like, have to thing? But we have to charge you extra, and it's like 5% because they get charged like 3.9%, and I'm like, so if I just pay cash, it's cheaper. And they're like, yeah. Ecuador runs on cash.
And a lot of it, if you're going to go to any of the outdoor markets or anything, it's small cash, which is coins. Nothing bigger than a $20 bill. And even those, like, they'll run around and have to try to find change for you.
20s, like, they
hate when we do that.
They just look at you like, seriously, really? And it happens. Pocketfuls of small bills and the $1 coins. You know those Susan B coins that, like, you would occasionally randomly see? They're super rare in the U.S. They shipped them here. That is the most used denomination. Dollar coins. Man, we start out with a wad of them to go to the market, and they go out, and occasionally, if it's a lot, like, we give them a 5, they'll give us a couple back. We're like, all right, we'll get a couple back, and everybody just trades around.
Yeah, $1 bills don't exist here. When we had, when we first got here, and we had a few, and everybody just looks at you like, okay,
yeah,
that's what do we do with this?
Yeah, in the cash stores,
it just doesn't.
There's dollar coins, $5 bills, $10 bills.
I always think that's funny. Yeah.
All right, so let's see, pricing.
I guess I had the assumption, given the lower cost of living, that everything was just going to be cheaper. And while a lot of stuff is cheaper, there's stuff that isn't. Clothes are the one that sort of stands out for me. I guess I thought it was going to be cheaper than U.S. pricing.
We knew a lot of it's imported from China directly.
So I figured it would at least be cheaper.
No,
not really.
Like a pair of jeans, cheapo pair of jeans, whatever local made brand, which a lot of the clothes are local. $15. You might get it for 13 or 14 if you stand there for long enough and haggle with the person.
So I suppose that is a bit cheaper than what the U.S. probably is now.
That's what I paid for Walmart jeans
years ago.
Fair.
So I couldn't actually speak to right now as we speak. But it's definitely not as cheap as I thought it was going to be. I think that's something probably to keep in mind. Now, I know there's also a lot that you can have custom made that people say are actually a really great deal. We just haven't done it yet. We haven't needed to do it yet. We've brought enough to kind of get us
There is a
through
ton of custom
years.
clothes makers, seamstress. Like, every city has some, and they just sit there with a sewing machine, and they're just surrounded by mounds of, like, scraps of fabrics, and they'll just make do whatever you want. I went to have, like, my jeans repaired. They had a bunch of, I'm like, well, how much to have, like, all these tears repaired? And it's like $1. Like, there's multiple, it's just like $1.
You don't pay me $1 to do it. So some of it's cheap. But yeah, it's just something, and that kind of comes down to what are you going to bring, and and what's important to you. You know, clothes are not tremendously important to us. As long as they sort of still work, we'll keep wearing them, and that's about it. But if it's something that's important to you, it's definitely something to keep in mind. Um, the other thing that isn't important to everyone but is to us are unscented soap products.
This is a big one. Unscented anything.
Anything. Toilet paper, paper towels, soap.
No, everything. Everything is
Everything.
heavily chemically scented. Every paper towel, every napkin, every this. Like I sit there in the store and I poke little holes and I try to sniff them. I'm like, maybe this one isn't terrible. Then I get it home where there's no smells. We live in a smell-free, beautiful, wonderful, natural environment up in the mountains. Oh my gosh. And we open it here and we're like, oh, and it's gaggingly bad. And I'm like, it didn't smell in the store.
So, I mean, I know there's a lot of people who don't mind that, but if if you do mind, I don't have an answer. We've found some paper products. Honestly, at some point, I think it's just as cheap as you can get. They don't put the scent on.
It's the big commercial rolls for like the commercial bathroom. I found one brand that doesn't scent theirs.
Yeah. There's laundry soap. You know, we have to go to Loha to get laundry soap, which is a giant pain, but it's the only one that isn't as heavily scented.
And I don't think it's even an Ecuadorian product. I think it's a Colombian product that they import specially.
Oh, the big B. Yeah, it is. It is from Colombia. And you know, dish soap is also kind of a hassle to find that isn't, you know, the super heavily scented, very chemical soap. We've never found any kind of shower gel body soap. We import it. Same with toothpaste.
Yep.
I would like to be people that didn't have to import things.
You're like, oh, I don't want a sodium lauryl sulfate product. Good luck.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm sure they're in bigger cities, I would imagine, but not in Loja. So in this area, it's just kind of out of luck on that one.
Yeah, in the smaller areas, there's a smaller selection of what's available, and it's not the natural anything.
Luckily, it's not horrible to import those things. We've kind of found ways where it's not terribly expensive. It's kind of a hassle, feels kind of annoying, but you know, that's just something that's important.
Until we grow ourselves a soap nut tree and we make our own soaps.
That one's rough.
It's on the long list.
The same with cooking oil. We don't like to use any vegetable oil at all. I was under a very silly assumption, apparently, that because coconuts and avocados grow in this country, I would. Whoa, wasp!
Poop off.
I was under the assumption that because they grow here, we would be able to get those oils. No, strangely enough,
it's not processed here.
It's not processed here, which was just something I didn't even consider. It's just my brain grows there. I can get it.
Vegetable oil is as cheap as soda. Like, it's really cheap. And you go to your store and there's a huge selection of vegetable oils. And then sometimes in a fancy store, and they'll have olive oils. Are they really olive oils?
Some are not.
A lot of them are not. Yeah, your high end stuff just doesn't make it here, and there's not like if it's a very specific name known brand and not a Chinese impersonation knockoff, which it could also be like you could get real olive oil.
There are some stores in Loja where we can get some of the more specialty items like that, like coconut oil, xanthan gum, which is a weird thing that we need because we're gluten-free, so that's a gluten-free baking item. It's a weird thing. I'd like to live without it, but I haven't quite gotten to figuring that out. So there's all those weird specialty things that you can find. It just takes a little bit of effort and talking to other people. And that's pretty much what you have to do for that weird stuff, because you're not going to be able to Google it here.
All right. Starbucks. There just isn't. Like in Loja, there's a few good coffee shops. There's a few questionable coffee shops. Ecuador is a strange double-edged sword on the coffee. Some of the best coffee in the world is here. Coffee is big to us. We love it. We grow it. We roast it. Everything about coffee. Eventually, we'll sell super fantastic coffee that nobody else in the world can touch. Eventually. You can get fantastic coffee in Ecuador, and it is incredibly rare. The coffee ends up being rather mediocre. It is not well cared for. It is not well processed. It is not always well roasted. It ends up sort of ruining it. Now, like I said, in the middle of the big cities, yeah, there's some award-winning coffee shops. We have
Yeah.
fond memories of at least one, and there's a few more. Um, but as for the most part, no, no, you are on your own on your coffee habit. We don't care.
We
We
like being on our own on things.
we roast it, we grind it, we brew it. We have all of our kit. We have our clevers and our thing, and our whole coffee experience, and it is fantastic. I would wager serious money that I can beat anybody's coffee with what we drink every single day. Uh,
Yeah.
but if you have a Starbucks habit, you're gonna have to learn to roll your own there.
A little bit the same with chocolate. It grows here.
And
Is
good.
oh, it's so good. But finding the end product here is harder. There just isn't the equipment. There isn't the processing to get to that fantastic end result. There's Picari, which is I think the only actual like official brand
Yeah.
that I think is real chocolate, not all the added milk chocolate.
There's a couple. They're really expensive per bar. Um,
Like the Picari is great, but it's like $2.50 for like 50 grams. I think it's expensive.
yeah.
It's delicious.
Now we found some more local stuff. The flavor is incredible. It is wonderful. It is rich. It's got all these notes and flavors, and it is pretty. It's crudely processed. Um, the equipment just isn't here to process. So they have the most perfect raw material of the best tasting stuff. There's just not the local like boutique industries to produce it.
It's just kind of an interesting point that it's kind of like the oils. We just expected because it grew here that the end result would just be here
Yeah.
in excess, but it just isn't.
Okay. Shorter days, slower growth. Your garden, if you think of your normal garden in the summer without realizing it, it's growing on 15, 16 hours of sun. Good days. Plant wakes up, does its thing, and just grows. Beautiful long summer days. Okay. We don't really have summer. We don't really have winter either.
It's pretty much the exact same all year long
It's
as far
pretty
as daylight hours.
Yeah. We're probably at least half the days cloudy. Some parts of the year more, and we only get 12 hours total. And with the mountains around us, we get 10. So after you get your 10 hours, if the sun can get there, and then you subtract the clouds, you're down to like 5 on a day that wasn't totally cloudy. Everything just grows slowly, and that's
There just is not that incredible summer explosion of growth that we're all just kind of used to. So while we have year-long growing season, it's going to take the whole year.
yeah. And you may plan out double or triple the space to grow things because they're just you're just gonna need a little more space for that. But land here is relatively cheap, so
It's just one of those things. I was watching my poor little pepper plants. Like, are you going to grow? Are you gonna... Oh, you're finally growing. It just took you a really long time.
and they're producing.
Oh, you're doing
peppers
good now. It just took so much longer than I'm used to that I'm like, well, what's going on? What's wrong
Now,
with it?
on a pepper, when you go around and you see a pepper in somebody's yard, you're like, what is that shrub?
It's a tree.
Is that peppers on your? It's 12 feet high. It's woody, and it's just hanging with peppers. And you're like, that's a pepper plant? Yeah, they never die.
Some
They just
things
keep
can
growing.
just grow for years and years and years here because there's no winter to kill them.
You get a lot of peppers when you have a 12-foot tree of just like.
So if you're
shrubby-
patient, then you're going to get awesome plants. You just have to be a little bit more patient and plan a little bit more space.
So the shorter days, quality of tools. Now we're going to do a whole video on what we brought, what we wish we would have brought, what we forgot. It's kind of that list, particular to us starting a homestead, and we tried to really look at it and prep really well for okay, what are we doing, what are we going to bring, and there are some things that we forgot.
There's some things that are a little different than we planned them to be. So there's like, well, we could have done things a little bit differently.
We could have done a little differently. Would have been a little smarter in the long run.
So we want to share those
And
tips.
yeah, from tools to just in general, a bunch of stuff. It's just a little bit different. There's certain things that bring it, and there's other ones that like I brought a planer. I had a big woodworking project right before we left Tennessee, and I bought a nice DeWalt planer. I could do all sorts of stuff with that. It requires replacement blades. You can't sharpen them. Just that model is like that. I can't get the blades here. They don't sell that planer here. I would have to import every set of blades.
I think a lot of what we didn't realize were the replacement pieces of the item.
Yep.
There's just we just missed that in the we should either bring the replacements or not bring a product that we couldn't get the replacements of.
Yeah, her cell phone. The guys looked at it and they're like, "We don't have that part. That phone isn't sold here."
It's just the phone I've had for years. I don't know.
Yeah.
Didn't even think about it. So it's things like that that I will do a video on.
We'll do a
be
video
able to
on
get into details. Can you check the microphone? Is it still
Oh yeah,
on?
it's still going. We have to check it. It
making
lives
sure.
like 23 minutes, or 27 minutes. When I get there. So there's a weird hodgepodge of metric and standard. You go to buy plumbing parts and you're like, is that 24 millimeter pipe or is that 1 inch? Could be either. There's both. Like it's literally everything's a hodgepodge, and you go and you talk to the carpenter about getting a board, and you'll say that it's so many pulgadas wide, which are inches. Inches are pulgadas is the word for it, and then 3 meters long. You don't say feet long. Feet are weird. Nobody knows feet.
Yeah,
But
nobody uses feet, but they can interchange
inches, and then it goes to meters, and then
sometimes centimeters.
you can use centimeters, and then they usually have to think about that for a second. But it's just it's not a country that was big enough to dominate and have its own system, so it just has a hodgepodge from everywhere in the world.
You buy everything at the market in pounds.
Yep.
Everything is pound. But
Unless, but the bigger markets.
But then you go to like a store and everything's I don't know.
Some things are pounds. Some things are per kilo. You're like, so I have to multiply, but
and you're trying to compare prices of things in different ways, and you're like, oh, I don't know.
It's like trying to do toilet paper math. Which one's a better deal? Okay.
Oh man.
Road maintenance. So in the States, there's road washed out. Okay, well we're gonna send a crew. We're gonna look at it. We have to survey it. We have to put in a work order. We have to get approval. Get this and that. Well, there's an environmental review. Someone saw a beaver once. Oh, that was a beaver. And a certain spotted daisy. And then something. Well, the neighbors complained. Well, now there has to be a review in the process. If the road washes out or there's a slide over something, dudes are rolling when somebody calls them.
Yep.
And a couple of dudes show up with a shovel and a beat to death, excavator or usually a backhoe, and boom, and it's going down the hill. And if that's your hill,
sorry,
better come ask them to move it further away.
To your neighbor's hill.
Otherwise, they're going to clear the road's going to go down. Everyone waves thank you. Life moves on. It is done. It is brutally efficient and effective, and a lack of bureaucracy.
There's also no closed roads when they're doing that. Like we saw that on the way coming back on the pass the other day. There had been like a small slide, and there was a big bunch of the giant bamboo that had sort of like landed near on the road, and they were clearing it. Did they close the road? Did they put cones? Did they have a flagger? No. It was just two dudes.
One dude says stop. The other dude's like pecking it out and chucking it over, and everyone just sort of waits. And then they'll get out of the way for a minute, and they'll let traffic go, and they'll kind of go back.
And then they'll wave you by. And
That's
honk
it.
and things, and it's fine. Everybody's patient. Everybody just does what they need to do.
It's actually really awesome. We see it all the time. Like, you guys just get it done.
Yeah.
So certain things, they just don't mess around.
Yeah, I think here they have to. It's too commonplace to be like, oh well, maybe we'll do it. No, just you have to get it done. But even our road gets maintained
the last
fantastically.
I just messaged the guy and I'm like, hey, I think something 2 hours. 2 hours there was equipment on site. And it's at least a half an hour drive from wherever they were. So wow, like totally just rebuilt the river crossing, like, and then asked me how it was. So that was different. We did not expect that either.
No, I guess I never really put a lot of thought into it. I just assumed everywhere was the same. No,
Or that's at least our province. Every province is different. They
it's
have their
true.
own.
And you can tell when you're driving from one province to the next when you have crossed over because the road will be better or worse
Suddenly.
very suddenly, which is kind of a strange thing. So clearly, they all have their own priorities there.
Yep.
Yep. I don't know. Is there anything else?
Ah, gosh, I think that's
Man,
pretty good.
yeah, I'm sure there's other things, but we can't tell you everything. Probably something up to surprise.
There's always something that's a surprise. When we come up with new stuff, we'll make a new list and we'll share it. But that's what came to mind. We wanted to. There's a bunch of people who have messaged us. They're looking at moving here. They're interested in it. This and that. So we're like, let's share kind of our experience, our things, what we what sort of caught us off guard of we didn't realize. I wish we could have had that sort of information rather than like glossy salesman talk, which was the only thing that we could find of like,
Yeah.
hey, it's great, everything's perfect. No, we know it's perfect.
I don't think anything on this list could have possibly made us change our mind, but
No.
it would have lessened a few.
You're like, oh, we'll prepare for that. Oh, we'll do this other thing slightly differently, and that's all we really wanted when we were moving was we wanted real, honest information.
We had absolutely no idea what to bring, what we could get here, and the 5 days we spent here years ago was not. We tried to get as much information, but it's not enough.
No.
So if we can kind of
sleep deprived,
ease that for other people and be like, here's some things to know to be able to expect. That might help.
All right.
Yeah. We're gonna go back to work.
We got work to do. There's a house up there that's not there yet. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you for the next one. Who's the big pig? Who's the big pig?